Greetings, dear listeners. I am the Nightmare Maestro, and tonight, I shall weave for you a tapestry of terror that will haunt your dreams long after the final word has faded. Prepare yourselves for a journey into the heart of a mystery that has captivated and terrified the online world for years. This is the tale of a Candle Cove found footage. The footage begins with a shaky camera shot, focusing on a group of friends huddled around a computer screen. The leader, a young woman with piercing green eyes named Jackie, speaks with barely contained excitement. "Guys, we've finally got enough evidence to start our investigation into Candle Cove," she says, her voice trembling with anticipation. "This could be the biggest story of our lives." The camera pans across the faces of her companions: Theo, a lanky young man with thick-rimmed glasses; Julia, a petite woman with a shock of purple hair; and Orion, a burly fellow with a nervous twitch in his left eye. Little did they know, their quest for truth would lead them into a nightmare beyond their darkest imaginings. The group's first interview takes place in a dimly lit living room. An elderly woman, her hands shaking as she clutches a worn teddy bear, recounts her memories of Candle Cove. "It was different from other shows," she whispers, her eyes distant. "The characters, they seem to look right through the screen at you. And the skin taker, oh, the skin taker." Her voice trails off, and for a moment, the only sound is the soft ticking of a grandfather clock in the corner. Suddenly, the woman's eyes snap back into focus, filled with terror. "You shouldn't be looking into this," she hisses. "Some things are better left forgotten." As the team reviews their footage that night, Theo notices something strange in the background of the interview. "Guys, look at this," he says, pointing to a shadowy figure barely visible in the corner of the frame. They zoom in, and a collective gasp escapes their lips. The figure appears to be a crude puppet, its jaw working up and down in an unnatural rhythm. That's impossible," Jackie stammers. "We were alone in that room." Unbeknownst to them, this was just the beginning of the horrors that awaited them. Their investigation leads them to an abandoned TV studio on the outskirts of town. As they enter the dilapidated building, the air grows thick with dust and the scent of decay. "This is where they supposedly filmed Candle Cove," Julia explains, her voice echoing in the empty space. As they explore, Orion's camera picks up strange distortions, brief flashes of what appear to be puppet strings dangling from the ceiling. But when they look up, there's nothing there. The team splits up to cover more ground, unaware that they're being watched by unseen eyes. Jackie finds herself in what appears to be an old control room. As she examines the rusted equipment, a burst of static erupts from one of the monitors. For a split second, she sees a grainy image of a pirate ship sailing on a sea of teeth. Her heart racing, she calls out to the others, but her voice is drowned out by a haunting melody that seems to emanate from the very walls. "You have to go inside," a child's voice sings, the words barely discernible through the static. Jackie stumbles backward, her feet tangling in a mass of cables. As she falls, the camera tumbles from her grasp, capturing her terrified expression before cutting to black. The footage resonates with Theo frantically searching for Jackie. He finds her unconscious in the control room, a trickle of blood running from her nose. As he helps her to her feet, Jackie's eyes flutter open, but something is different. Her gaze is distant, unfocused, as if she's looking at something far beyond the confines of the room. "The laughingstock," she murmurs. "It's calling us." Theo's confusion turns to horror as he realizes Jackie is speaking in the voice of a young child. Back at their makeshift headquarters, the team reviews the footage from the TV studio. What they see defies explanation. In the background of every shot, barely visible, are fleeting glimpses of puppet-like figures, their movements jerky and unnatural. "This can't be real," Orion says, his voice shaking. we're losing our minds. But as they continue to watch, the images become clearer, more defined. The skin taker, with his glass eyes and jaw that grinds back and forth. Horace Horrible, his hooked hand glinting in the dim light. And always, always, the sound of waves and that haunting melody. Determined to uncover the truth, the team delves deeper into their investigation. They track down former crew members, each interview more disturbing than the last. A cameraman, his hands trembling as he lights cigarette after cigarette, speaks of strange occurrences during filming. The puppets, they moved on their own, he whispers. And the children in the audience, their eyes were wrong. As he speaks, the camera picks up a faint scratching sound. It grows louder, seeming to come from inside the walls. The interview ends abruptly as the man flees, leaving behind only the echo of his terrified screams. That night, Julie awakes to find herself standing in front of her bedroom mirror. Her reflection stares back at her, but its mouth moves independently, speaking words she can't understand. She reaches out to touch the glass, and for a moment, she feels the cold, rough texture of splintered wood beneath her fingers. When she snaps out of her trance, she finds her hands covered in splinters, blood seeping from tiny wounds. The mirror shows only her terrified face, but the faint sound of laughter echoes in her ears. The team's research leads them to a remote coastal town, where Candle Cove allegedly originated. As they drive along the winding cliffside road, their car radio crackles to life, emitting a cacophony of static and disjointed voices. Through the noise, they hear a child's voice singing, to the ship, let's go to the ship." Suddenly, Orion slams on the brakes. Standing in the middle of the road is a figure that looks disturbingly like Pirate Percy, his painted wooden face grinning malevolently. But when they blink, the figure is gone, leaving only the empty road stretching before them. In the coastal town, they find an old lighthouse keeper who claims to have witnessed the creation of Candle Cove. His weathered face contorts with fear as he recounts his tale. "It wasn't meant for children," he says, his voice barely above a whisper. "It was a doorway, a calling. They used the airwaves to reach out to something." As he speaks, the camera's focus shifts, blurring slightly. In the background, the sea churns violently, and for a split second, something massive and tentacled breaches the surface. The lighthouse keeper's eyes widen in terror. "They're here," he gasps. "You've brought them back." Back in their hotel room, the team reviews their footage, growing increasingly uneasy. Jackie, who has been acting strangely since the incident at the TV studio, suddenly speaks up. "We need to go to the beach," she says, her voice oddly monotone. The laughingstock is waiting. The others exchange worried glances, but something compels them to follow her lead. As they make their way down to the shore, the sky darkens ominously, and the wind carries the faint sound of childish laughter. On the beach, they find an old, dilapidated ship partially buried in the sand. Its rotting planks seem to shift and move in the corners of their vision, and a figurehead carved in the likeness of a leering skull adorns its prow. As they approach, Jackie begins to sing in a child's voice, to the ship, let's go to the ship." Suddenly, the sand beneath their feet begins to shift and churn. Skeletal hands burst from the ground, grasping at their ankles. The team screams in terror, their cries drowned out by the roar of the sea and the ghostly laughter of unseen children. Fleeing from the beach, the team finds themselves lost in a maze-like series of narrow streets. The buildings seem to lean in on them, their windows like watching eyes. As they turn a corner, they come face to face with a group of children. But something is terribly wrong. The children's movements are jerky and unnatural, their eyes glassy and vacant. "Come play with us," the children say in unison, their voices distorted and echoing. Candle Cove is waiting. The teen backs away in horror, only to find their path blocked by more puppet-like children, closing in from all sides. Trapped and desperate, the teen barricades themselves in an abandoned house. As night falls, they huddle together, the sound of scratching and giggling coming from outside. Theo, his nerves frayed, turns to the camera. "If anyone finds this footage," he says, his voice trembling, "don't look for Candle Cove. It's real, and it's coming for us all." Suddenly, the TV in the corner flickers to life, showing nothing but static. But through the white noise, they hear a familiar tune, and a child's voice saying, "You have to go inside." The static on the TV begins to coalesce into shapes. The teen watches in horror as crude puppet figures take form, dancing macabrely across the screen. The skin taker turns its hollow eyes towards them, its jaw grinding in a terrible grin. "Welcome back, children," it rasps. "We've been waiting for you." As the puppets on the screen grow larger, seeming to press against the glass, the teen realizes with dawning terror that the room around them is changing. The walls warp and twist, taking on the appearance of a ship's wooden interior. Julia screams as puppet strings descend from the ceiling, wrapping around her limbs. She struggles, but her movements become jerky and uncontrolled. When she turns to face the others, her eyes are glassy, her expression frozen in a rictus grin. "Join us," she says, but it's not her voice anymore. It's the voice of a child, echoing with an otherworldly resonance. Orion tries to help her, but as he touches the strings, they latch onto him as well. One by one, the team succumbs, their bodies transformed into grotesque, living puppets. Only Jackie remains untouched, watching with a mixture of horror and fascination as her friends twitch and dance to an unheard melody. She turns to the camera, her eyes wide with a terrible realization. "Don't you see?" she whispers. "We were always part of the show. We just forgot our lines." As she speaks, the room continues to transform. The floorboards become the deck of a ship, and through the windows, they can see a vast sea of gnashing teeth. The laughingstock materializes around them, creaking and groaning as it sets sail on that impossible ocean. The puppet friends dance and cavort, their movements growing more frenzied and disturbing. Jackie stands at the helm, her expression serene as she guides the ship through treacherous waters. "We're going home," she says, her voice a blend of her own and a child's. "To where it all began." In the distance, a massive, tentacled shape rises from the sea, its maw lined with rows upon rows of razor-sharp teeth. As the ship sails closer to the monstrosity, reality itself seems to unravel. The camera's footage becomes distorted, images overlapping and blurring together. Glimpses of the real world bleed through, the abandoned TV studio, the coastal town, the team's own homes. Through it all, the sound of children laughing and singing grows louder, drowning out the roar of the sea and the grinding of the skin taker's jaw. Jackie turns to the camera one last time, her face flickering between her own and that of a wooden puppet. "Don't you see?" she says. "Candle Cove was never just a show. It was a way back. And now, we're all going inside." The footage cuts to static, interspersed with flashes of disturbing imagery, puppet strings, gnashing teeth, hollow eyes. When it clears, we see a child's bedroom, dimly lit by the glow of a TV set. A young girl sits cross-legged on the floor, staring at the static-filled screen with rapt attention. Her mother enters the room, a look of concern on her face. "Honey, what are you watching?" she asks. The girl turns, her eyes unnaturally wide. "Candle Cove, Mommy," she says. "It's my favorite show." The mother frowns, looking at the static-filled screen. "But sweetie, there's nothing there. It's just static." As she speaks, we see a flicker of movement on the screen, the briefest glimpse of a pirate ship sailing on a sea of teeth. but it's gone in an instant, leaving only white noise. The girl turns back to the TV, a small smile playing on her lips. "You just can't see it," she whispers. "But they're calling me. We're all going inside soon." The camera pans around the room, revealing crayon drawings pinned to the walls. They depict crude versions of the Candle Cove characters, the Skin Taker, Horace Horrible, Pirate Percy. But among them are new drawings, showing figures that look disturbingly like Jackie, Theo, Julia, and Orion. In the corner of the room, partially hidden by shadows, sits a familiar-looking teddy bear, the same one held by the elderly woman in the team's first interview. As the mother leaves the room, shaking her head in confusion, the camera zooms in on the girl's face. For a split second, her features seem to shift, taking on a wooden, puppet-like quality. She turns to look directly into the camera, her eyes now black and hollow. "They're all part of the show now," she says, her voice a chilling blend of a child's and something far older and more malevolent. "And soon, you will be too. All you have to do is go inside." The footage cuts to black, but the audio continues. We hear the sound of waves, the creaking of a ship, and the distant laughter of children. Then, a familiar melody begins to play, growing louder and more distorted. As the music reaches a crescendo, a child's voice whispers, "Candle Cove is waiting. Won't you come and play?" The audio fades to silence, leaving the viewers with a lingering sense of dread and the unsettling realization that the line between reality and nightmare has been irrevocably blurred. And so, dear listeners, our tale of Candle Cove comes to its chilling conclusion. But remember, every time you see static on your TV, every time you hear a child's laughter on the wind, Candle Cove may be calling. The question is, will you answer? Subscribe for more chilling tales from the Nightmare Maestro, and may your dreams be haunted by the echoes of the laughingstock's siren song.